Hello, and firstly, thank you for taking the time to watch the latest video from CSL. Today, we're going to be talking all about the CSL MyBase app. MyBase is a great tool for engineers to be able to install DualCom Pro devices and also to service them on the 6 monthly visits that you've got. So what I want to do first of all is just want to go through some of the permission levels that we've got on the MyBase app before we move into all the great new features that are being launched on the updated version of CSL MyBase. So we do have different permission levels, but different engineers have different responsibilities within an organization. So the permission levels that we've got a view-only access, which is more for office staff. It means that they can see all of the devices, they can see the signal strengths, etc. But you can't make any changes to the devices or configuration or send test calls, etc. So it's just a view-only option. Next, we have one-time access. So if you are using contractors or subbies to do any work for you that don't have logins to see your estate, then they would have a browser version. And again, the only way for them to access it would be for you to give them the serial number and the connection ID, both of which aren't on the unit together. So the only way that they could get connectivity is if you're going to give them the information in order to do so. Next, we've got the limited site access. So this means that an install engineer or a service engineer can only view the device that they're working on site at that time. So they don't see any other devices. That's a really, really popular choice for lots and lots of companies and engineers. Next, we've got the user access. This allows a user to see all of the devices that you've got installed, to make any configuration changes, to check signal strengths, etc. And then the final access we've got is admin. Again, similar to user, you can see and do everything, but you also get the additional credentials for managing the user access. So as you can see, different permission levels for different people to use within the organization. Next, what we'd like to do is just show you how to set up the app, just so you can see how simple and straightforward it is. We utilize something called multi-factor authentication as well. So again, just important that you clear on how we do that. So what I've done just to demonstrate it is I've actually done a forgotten password link for mine, because this will take me on the same journey that you would have to take when you're setting up for the first time, or if you've got an issue with the app. So click on the link to reset the details. And what you'll now see as part of our multi-factor authentication is that you will either have to utilize one of the authenticator apps. All of those are listed on here. So this would be what you would have to do in order to gain access to the app. But not everybody's using the app. So what we also have down at the bottom is a section here that says that you don't have an authenticator app, and to tick the box and follow the link to either use email or SMS. So if you're not using one of the authenticator apps listed here, then quite simply tick this option, say that you're not using an app, and you'll then be taken to this other part here that will say you can either send an SMS or you can send an email. I'm going to get an email sent to me. The email probably takes about 10 or 15 seconds to arrive. You've got 60 seconds to put in your MFA multi-factor authentication code. So I've now just got my email. So we're going to put this into the app here. And log in. And because I've just selected that I've forgotten my password, I'm going to also update my password now. When you're using iPhones and Samsung, this stuff is just so simple and straightforward now. So I wouldn't envisage anybody having any issues with the multi-factor authentication. So there we go, press submit, and I'm now into the app. So for those that have been using the MyBase app, you can now see that there are some new dashboard functionalities built into this. So we've now got install a new device, great new feature to make sure that you set up the devices correctly. Next, we've got service an existing device, where you're on your 6 monthly maintenance visit, and you would obviously, as it says there, be just doing a service on the device. Next, we've got manage a device. So manage a device will let you see all of the devices you've got. Now, if you're a user or an admin or view only, then you will see the devices in here. So you'll be able to select browse device or search by connection ID, and then you'll get just the information that you would previously have got on the first version of the MyBase app. You would get here. So click on manage device, and you would then see all the information with what you're familiar with seeing today with using the MyBase app. So you get the options to see the signal strengths, send test calls, up at the top part here, service. So what type of unit is it? Where's it being installed? What type of hardware have you got? So the serial number, is it on pins, or are you plugging it onto control panels for serial connectivity? So this part most people are familiar with today, but what we're going to do, we're going to go back to the new features on the dashboard, which is install a new device and service an existing device, because these are the two areas that will get used by most engineers on a daily basis. So what we're going to do, we're going to go to install a device. So first and foremost, make sure that the device is on test with the ARC, make sure it's powered up, and also make sure that it's commissioned. So to ensure that the device is commissioned, once you power it up, you'll have the LEDs on the front here. Once you get the third LED on solid green, it means that the device is commissioned and is fully online. But we'll revisit that later on in the update. So we're going to start the installation. So to start installation, if you've got the limited access that I mentioned before, which is where you can only see a device that you're working on whilst on site from a new install or a service, and the only option you will see is scan QR code. If you've got the user access, view only, or admin, then you'll also have the option to enter the connection ID and also to browse sites. But we'll go ahead with the scan the QR code. So select scan QR code, scan the QR code, and this will now bring up the unit that we are installing today. So the first thing it shows us is that the site is connected when it last polled. It shows me the site name, it shows me the connection ID, and it shows me if it's pins only or if you're doing serial connectivity. So if you've selected that you want to plug it onto a control panel, it would actually tell you which one you've got it connected to there. What we can also see at the bottom here, that this is a dual radio. So radio module number 1 is on 60% using 4G. Radio module number 2 is on 50%, and it is also using 4G. And as you can see here, the device will refresh every 30 seconds. So you're always getting that latest information. So next step on the installation, have I got the correct unit for the correct site? So if this is blank at this point, you can put in the site name or the contract number, whatever it is you use to identify the sites. But really, really important, because the more information you put onto the MyBase app, the easier it is for your business to manage your connections simpler and quicker. So at this point, you could update the site details if you need to. Updating the information here for the site details does not impact the information that you hold to the ARC. So if you want to put a unit on a different site, then it's really, really important that you update the monitoring station if the site where the unit is going to be installed is going to change. So all that you're doing on this part here is updating what's seen on MyBase. You're not updating anything to do with the alarm receiving center. So save address. Next option that we've got is, do we want to install this on serial connection or do we want to install it on pins? So initially I'm going to install this on pins. So if I select pins, it gives me a little note here just to say if you're using pins, you are missing out on some of the great features that you get with serial connectivity. Serial connectivity will let you deliver alarm signals in extended formats, so CF, contact ID, but it also, and really importantly, gives you the ability to connect to those leading control panels for upload, download, so for making changes remotely, emitting zones, changing user codes, carrying out remote maintenance, etc. So doing serial connectivity does give you a lot more, but for the purpose of this section here, we're going to continue with pins. So continue with pins. What it will also tell us now is that please ensure at this point that you carry out the pin learn. Now, to carry out the pin learn, all you would need to do, there's a label on here that says press C to test or hold C to do your self-learn. So if I press and hold the C button for what is approximately 5 seconds, the amber light will give it a brief flicker, and then I've then done a pin learn. One of the things that we get lots and lots of phone calls for within the tech support team is about doing pin learns, etc. So we've got the sticker on the device there that says tap C to test the alarms and hold C to do your self-learn. So at this point, I've done the self-learn, so I'm now going to continue with the test. So next, what it's now saying is to trigger some alarms in the property, and they'll appear within the logs as we go through. So what we're now going to do is we're going to start triggering a few alarms to get those through. So I'm just going to trigger some alarms on my device here. And we'll just let this count down actually, just so you can see all the alarms that come through. And as I said, this refreshes itself every 30 seconds. If you want to update it quicker than the 30 seconds, and as it says there, just pull the screen down and that'll refresh your alarms. What we'll do, I'll just keep triggering these alarms here. And then in what is 5 seconds, it will update the alarms in here, so you can make sure that the device is commissioning correctly. So there we go. We can see what alarms I've now triggered on here. So again, a really, really good way of ensuring that you're commissioning your devices correctly. Quite important at this point is that this process doesn't mean that you don't check with the ARC. You've still got to confirm with the monitoring station that they've received the alarms that you triggered. You want to make sure that you commission your site correctly. So what we're seeing here is that the alarms are hitting our platform and getting delivered through to the monitoring station, but please ensure that you can track your monitoring station to ensure that those alarms have gone through correctly. So the final part is that we have now finished the initial installation. So you can see here, what we tried to do with MyBase is make it as simple and straightforward as possible, but also ensuring that you're doing the key things that you need to do whilst doing your initial install. Next, we're going to go to service an existing device. So again, click on the existing device. As we're doing the initial install, make sure that the system's on test, make sure it's powered up as you would imagine, and obviously commissioned, which doing a maintenance visit, you would expect it to be powered up and also commissioned. So next we'll go to start service. So we've got the same options again, scan QR code, enter the connection ID or browser sites, but we'll go to the scan QR code. So we'll scan the QR code, and this will now bring up the information again. So we can see the site's connected, we can see it's at John's house, we can see the connection ID, we can see that it's on pins only, and we can see the signal strengths on the devices at the bottom there. So next step is that let's test the alarm system. So what we're going to do now is we're going to send test alarms through to the monitoring station. The site's already been commissioned when you did the initial install. What we now want to make sure is that the signals are getting through to the monitoring station when we test them. So if you're installing a single path device, so a DigiAir Pro 4G or a DigiAir Pro LAN, when you test the test alarms, you will get 2 alarms that go through to the monitoring station. When you're doing dual path, so which is either dual radio or IP and 4G, you'll get 4 test calls that go through to the monitoring station. But next part is we'll send the test alarms. So we've sent the request through to send the test alarms, and we'll just let it count down again like we did before. Say if you want to update the information quicker, then you can update it quicker. So if I scroll down, I'll see one of the test alarms going through, but we'll again just let it see. We'll see the test calls come through when it refreshes. One of the other things that we get lots of phone calls for within tech support team is, can you send test alarms for us? I mentioned before that you can press the C button on the device to send test alarms, or on the app, we've now got this process here. So we can now see that those alarms have all gone through to the monitoring station. So the service a device is just making sure that you do the key things that you have to do when doing your install. We want to make sure that that DualCom unit is working correctly. So next step is all about checking the firmware. This for me is probably the biggest change that we've had on alarm signaling. And I would think of your DualCom Pro device as an iPhone. Is every so often there's an update to the iPhone to improve stability, patches, so on and so forth. The DualCom device is exactly the same, is that we will provide updated firmware to improve performance, to roll out better features, etc. So at this point here, when you check the firmware, this will tell you if you are on the latest firmware. This My device is on the latest firmware, as it says there, you know, great news. If you're not on the latest firmware, it will then give you the option to update it to the latest firmware. Once you select update the firmware, you are going to ensure that your Pro device is on the latest firmware, the latest technology, and the latest features and benefits. So really, really important as we're doing that service that we do that. Also, when we do an install, it will also confirm if you're not on the latest firmware update, it will make you update to the latest firmware. So next step, I've now completed the service. So go back to the dashboard. What I'd like to do is just go to the installer device again and just go to the serial connectivity. So again, you can see that the functionality of the device is so slick. Just a couple of presses of buttons and it's taking you to exactly where you need to go to. But what we're now going to do, we're just going to go to the section for serial connectivity. So on this section here, this will give you the ability to select what control panel you want to select to. So if I select, then I want to select it to Honeywell or Orisec or Risco or Texicom or Pyronics. I've got all the options on here. There's other panels as well. But for the purpose of this, let's just select that we're going to select to Pyronics. We're going to select the Euro and connecting by RS232. But what I'm going to do is going to click on the panel guide. So I'm going to click on the panel guide, and within the app, it's now taking you to all of the control panels that we've got the compatibility with for serial connectivity. So we mentioned the Pyronics panel before, so we'll select Pyronics. It then lets me choose what panel type. So am I using a 280? Am I using a Euro 46, a 76, a 162? For the purpose of this, we're going to select the Euro 46, and it will then give me all the information I need to know about in connecting the device by serial connection to that control panel. So the firmware version required of the control panel, what part of the lead plugs onto the Pyronics panel, what leads wire into the DualCom unit, but then it tells me about the panel programming, and then it tells me about setting up remote access, etc. So really simple and straightforward. But I could go to any of the options on here. I could go to ORISEC, and I can select the panel that I want. And again, I've got that information instantly on how to set up the device for the ORISEC control panels. I can go to Texicom, and likewise select that I want to connect to a Texicom, and I'm going to select to a Premier Elite using COM1, and I've got all the information that I need to connect to. You can see it's just so simple and straightforward using the MyBase app. So Honeywell, the different panel types that you've got on here, and it's all simple and straightforward. It's all geared towards making the install process a lot simpler and a lot more straightforward. But what we'll do, we'll go back now, because I don't want to make any changes on the firmware for this device. So let's just go back. So what I'm going to do now quite quickly is I'm just going to go on to a different device that I've got here, which is a device that's not powered up, just so we can cover the options when we're doing IP. So this is a device not installed, but this is an IP device. So on this section here, you can see the commission pending. It's not been powered up. It's assigned to CSL. I've got the connection ID. It's on pins only. I can see that both paths are offline. So LAN is offline and radio is offline. But on here, you can see on the LAN section, you've got the little cog in the top right-hand corner. So I can now put in my static IP details, or it will operate on DHCP. So if the IT department are giving you an IP address so they can see the device on their network, this is where you would put in the IP address, the subnet mask, and also the default gateway. You'd update the LAN settings, and it would update it automatically for you. Again, let's just go into here just to service an existing device. I said this device isn't online at the moment, but we'll just skip on through. So when we go through, the test alarms will obviously fail, but here we go, check the firmware. And you can see on this section here, there is now a new firmware available. So if you were to select upgrade firmware here, this would upgrade the firmware to the latest features that we've got within the device that you can currently use. So I'm just going to exit out of here. So what I want to do now, I just want to share just a couple of features within the actual Pro unit itself. Now you can see on here that there isn't a display, you've just got some LEDs, but the display is now your iPhone, it's your Samsung. And I'd probably say that the most technically advanced piece of equipment that we carry around with us is our mobile phone. So, you know, do you want to look at a little tiny display on the device, or do you want to be using your phone that gives you all of those great features and visibility of how that device is working? So I mentioned before, when we actually power up the device, we've got the 3 LEDs. So when you initially power it up, LED number 1 will go green, which means it's been powered. LED number 2 will then go green. LED number 3 will go green. And then once it's all fully commissioned, LED 3 will be the only one that's on, and it will be on green. But what you can also do, if you were to press the A button, this will then show you that you've got both paths online. So this is a dual radio. So both of my LEDs are on green. If it's on green, signal strength is above 40% for both of the modules. If it's on green flashing, signal strength is between 30 and 40%. And if there's nothing there at all, if it's red, it means that your signal strength isn't acceptable. So you'd have to locate your aerial, relocate the aerial. If this was a DigiAir that I'd installed, then I'd only see one of those LEDs on there. But one of the things that you have to do when you're commissioning is you have to put your sites into path fail. And this is really simple and straightforward to do. So once I've pressed A and I've got those 2 LEDs on there, you'll see LED 1 is green, LED number 2 is green. So what we then do at this stage is if we press and hold button C for a couple of seconds and let go, and you'll see that the secondary path is now flashing red. That has now gone into path fail, and you will now see that failure going through to the monitoring station. If I want to fail the primary path, then quite simply press and hold button B for a couple of seconds, and then I will then see that that has now gone into path fail as well. And again, check with the monitoring station that they've received those path fails. To restore the path fail, quite simply, press button A, and it's now restored. Press button C, and it's now restored, and you've now got the devices back online. I also mentioned before about self-learn and sending test calls. So self-learn, when we're doing that, is we press and hold button C for, as I said, what is roughly about 5 seconds. And we've now done a self-learn on the device. And then to trigger the test calls, as I mentioned before, you would just tap button C, and that will send test calls through to the monitoring station. We are here from a support point of view to ensure that your devices get installed as quickly as possible. If you do need to contact tech support, average wait times at the moment to talk about DualCom Pro is roughly 26 seconds. So if you need us, we're at the end of a phone. MyBase, I would say, reduces the amount of install time that you've got on site. It makes things a lot simpler to install. You've got live information as you're installing the device, if you want to install it or if you want to service it. Any questions that you've got regarding the MyBase app, any additional features that you think would benefit the MyBase app, please feel free to contact us. We do have an option on our website where you can join our product development research section, where if we are doing testing, if we want to roll out new features, etc., you can be part of that test. You can be part of the CSL community, just so we can make sure that we're always providing you with the best products, the best services, and the best features. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll speak to you soon. Thank you.